Yeah, let me start by asking you, did you want to provoke us with your movie?
No, no, um, not at all. I mean, I
Why
like.
not?
Um, I don't know this. I mean, in general, I like provocation, but this movie it was just an experiment, and um, it was not that we wanted to provoke. It was more like this. We want to try something. Made an adaptation by Kafka. I tried to act by myself. We wanted to shoot with rain.
A lot of rain, almost as much as sun now.
Mm, not really that I wanted to provoke myself, but I got provoked. First of all, by doing an adaptation. So I don't know whether I wouldn't do it. This by the way was a
And here's Damian
School-
Manuel. The kitchens around here are not that quick.
and by the way, I forgot to say it was the world premiere of my movie. I forgot to say that. Woohoo! And the director of cinema, the DOP is also here. Max Preis. Okay, yeah. Coming back to your question,
I think
yeah,
maybe
kind of. I got I got provoked by the literature stuff because I wouldn't do an adaptation because I have quite respect before literature. So this was kind of provocation for me. It's so I had to step out of my artistic pattern to do so. So I got inspired by Kafka. So I got provoked by him.
And you said beforehand that you developed this film in a seminar with Bellatar, and I mean, we know that other films have come out of that seminar also, and there was maybe something in the relationship with Bellatar. You kind of wanted to show him something.
The rain. I'm supposed to say the rain. No, the rain was Kafka. I mean, maybe also Bellatar, but it was already in the book. Yeah, unfortunately, Bellatar was only there in during the preparation of the movie, and but still we had an interesting work together, and he was kind of provoking me because I did the propose to change the Kafka protagonist, Raban, that's a male protagonist, and I made the offer to change it to a female protagonist, and Bellatar was like, no, I can't imagine a female protagonist in a Kafka story. So that provoked me to change Raban to Rabana to the female protagonist, and then later the next day I would provoke Bellatar and tell him, okay, I gonna act by myself, and he was like, okay, fine. So sometimes you like provocation wouldn't work. So I tried to provoke him, but he agreed, and so I appeared on the screen.
May I provoke you, Frederick, and ask you as a moderator to answer the question? Why did you program it and those two films as well, the second one, Jean Poet, under the label of Provocation?
Actually, the films were not at all controversial in our program group. When we saw them, when we saw Un Jeune Poète early on, it was the first movie that everyone agreed on, and we felt at the same time that this is a movie that could provoke someone else, and we felt that the beauty of it lied in the kind of awkwardness that was always a little bit bothersome, and the humor was something that was provoked more than in the film itself. So yeah, that was one idea. And when we saw the Hochzeitsvorbereitung auf dem Lande afterwards, and we saw so many connections between the two movies and those characters. I mean, for me, I don't like both characters. I think both characters are like really, I don't really feel well with those characters, and they're both so they're so wehleidig. How do you say? There's larmoyant maybe, and the one is in the rain, the one is in the sun, and they're still so much self-centered, and so I mean, yeah, there's so much about them to hate. So at the same time, obviously, there's something to like because you stay on, but first hate, and that's good. Yeah, and so I was provoked maybe.
Aren't you just getting old?
Pardon me? Why?
No, really,
Can you take
this is really a serious question. So my question was, aren't you just getting old? Because I had the impression, but it's also maybe more of a question to the two of you. Aren't these typical adolescent characters that you identify with when you're the age of the characters, and then later on in life maybe get a different perspective on them? This is not really a provocative question, but
Maybe Damien might want to answer.
Well, I have a really interesting response to the film and to the character with young people from audience, and this film is not a film about poetry, right? It's really a film about having this age, and it's a portrait of this age. But I work with Rémi. I already worked with him when he was 14 on one short film, so I'd like to continue to film him when he's 18. But then it's asking the question, it's very universal and simple question, what will I do with my life? Will I succeed at it? Am I scared or not? So this is one part of the answer. The other thing is, Rémi is quite special. He's quite special in the life. He's quite special, and he's very slow and very clumsy. And I can understand he can irritate, or because he has his own rhythm, and I try to film his own rhythm. So sometimes too slow, or sometimes. So maybe this is why he's provocative actor. I don't know.
Hans-Ulrich, what do we need to do to provoke you? Yeah.
I have a problem that you don't say what you mean with provocation. You invited us, you showed us films, and now you say, is this provocative? Did you think that your film was provocative? Hans-Ulrich, what provokes you? So what was your idea about the provocation? I didn't understand. I saw a film a few days ago that I really thought was a provocation. It was Night of Cups by
Terrence Malick.
I felt completely like a piece of shit seeing this film. So it provoked me, but it provoked me in a very negative way. And you can also have a provocation in a positive way. So what do you mean by provocation? And I thought with pro is something that is positive. Provocare in Latin means to speak for something. It's not like controverse, which is against something. So I think it's now up to you to tell us what you think, and then we can react to this. I mean, I can then react to this.
Should I again explain provocation? I mean, obviously. Pardon me?
No, we did not accept.
Oh, he asked him.
No.
Well, you know, there's always a kind of distance between the words and the films, and we hope that there's something happens between them. So this is already a first act of provocation, is labeling films that are not on the outside provocative as provocation. So it's really up to you.
I'm as well a critic. I'm not part of the organization, but a friend of the critics who organized the Critics Week. So I understood all those titles, genre, lust, provocation, for example, as a provocation to talk about the topic, not just about the films, but to talk about the topic and the way in which these topics might be interesting or important for us critics, and as well for you in the audience, and some of you are critics as well, so, and critics are audience for sure. So for me it's always a question whether, first of all, in a film provocation is a good thing or a bad thing. I think in general it's a good thing, and if you feel provoked by or provoked by Terrence Malick, we could now start to discuss on Terrence Malick, because I love the film. I think it's a great movie, the first great movie in this Berlinale for years. And but whatever. As well, the question is, if a critic has to provoke the audience, for example, or has to provoke other critics and curators and festival bosses with the writings. So the question is, how should we provoke? What should we provoke? Why should we provoke? Of course, and whom? So maybe it's not important to provoke festival bosses. Maybe for Hans, yes, but maybe Dieter Koslik we mustn't provoke. I don't know. So I think we are walking around these questions, and this should be a topic of this evening, or this could be, it should not, but it could be a topic of this evening.
You like to provoke anyhow?
Me?
Yeah.
Sometimes, yes, depending on whom and why, yes.
And what for? What do you like to provoke for?
I think in general that disagreement is a good thing, because a critic, why are we called critics? Because we criticize. So we ask a question. We question a film. We question ourselves sometimes. If we are good, it's this critique and this questioning is not the one way. And I think that questioning and criticizing and disagreement brings out truth. So Samir, in some other context, said he's a Hegelian. I'm as well a Hegelian. I think in this kind of dialectic debate, which means to set something and then to build an antithesis to this, and then you come to a synthesis. Maybe it's a consensus or just the beginning of another struggle. This idea is much more interesting for me, and at the end it's about what is interesting for me than to have this shy, dry, ordinary consensus to be nice to each other. Yeah. So provocation is a political thing, and the understanding of politics sometimes is absolutely non-political if politics just mean we all agree to stand on the same side, the right side, and of course you are all for human rights, I'm for human rights. How boring could it be?
But would that then be provocative if you would say I'm against it? This is not necessary. I mean, the question Hans told us was, okay, what do you mean about provocation in general? What means this word, and especially in the context of films? I mean, of course, I guess everybody agrees here that we like provocation against the mainstream, but then it starts again also the question, what is the mainstream, you know, like the Malick film, you know, like could be a discussion. But we have seen 2 films from young directors, and of course, in a way they are provocative because they are against all odds in the moment at the film industry. Yeah, that's why it's provocative. But this is not so heavy provocation at the moment, honestly. Of course, if you do comédie ridicule on a strange character, which is your friend, of course, nobody would in the industry would give money for that. So it's a kind of provocation, definitely against the CNC, you know.
But sometimes, I guess, critics would like films just for being non-mainstream. And I know there was this great debate with Hans. I have to come back to the Biennale. Yes, last Biennale, there was a big debate between critics and you as the festival director of the Biennale, and the general, to make a long and very complicated story, it was Austrian, so it was really complicated to make it short, is that you said you know before the critics are writing what they will write. You know the films they will like, they will praise, and you know even the lines how they are praising it. So critics are boring and absolutely not provocative, or maybe it was the provocation for you.
I mean, I didn't say critics. I didn't say this about critics. I said it about certain critics in Austria, about some people that I thought that were very obvious in the way that are doing a certain strategy, you know, but not because they were criticizing me, because I give a damn if they criticize me, because you can only be I didn't care about it very much because I don't take them serious. But this is not because I think that I'm so special or so good, but because I know what they do. They do a certain kind of business. They're not really responsible to their work, to the public, to the writing, to the films, but they take a certain stand with a certain interest. And this was something that I really hate, because this makes the whole thing so complicated, and the people who read it, they don't know what is the subtext, what they really try to do. And this was a controversy between them and me, but it was something very Viennese. Maybe it exists in other parts with other people as well, but it
Don't
wasn't
you have
even
your own interests when you write an article like that?
I have my own interest. I try to get my own interest in some relation to the what I call die Sache. What is so funny about die Sache?
The right cause?
No, not the right cause. The cause, la cosa, the cause. So
Cosa
about
Nostra.
Cosa Nostra, yeah.
how what?
Cosa Nostra.
Cosa Nostra. No, to be serious, everybody has his reasons, and that's what Jean Renoir said. Everybody has his reasons, and this is the nice thing and the terrible thing at the same time in the world, because everybody does something out of a certain interest, but it depends on how you in what direction and what your interests are aiming at, you know, because you cannot do any work without interest. I don't think that you can do anything up in the air. So you have to have a certain interest in what you're doing. If you write, if you make a film, so whatever. But this goes away from provocation. I think this is something else.
So this controversy you instigated, it was not meant as a provocation.
It was meant as a provocation, yeah. It was meant as because everybody know. I wanted to how to say, to lift the.
To open the box.
To open the box
Close it maybe.
and I wanted to attack them openly, and show them that I was not. I don't know, that I was not afraid of them. That, you know, they have the Produktionsmittel of the open of the media, and they don't treat it in a really way of responsibility. And I said this, and they were very, very fed up. But it's normal. I would be fed up if somebody would say this about me, and everybody would.
They have their means and you have your means also. So you actually have your position where you're able to, where your word is heard.
But the question is, if you try to play the game, if you try to be part of the game, you know, try to be in a relation to them and to the public and to everybody, or if you try to step out for a moment and try to articulate something different. And that's I think this is also the character of a provocation. Not that I think that what I did was so great or so important, but the provocation is maybe if you, I don't know, I think provocation always has to do with resistance, with something that you resist to.
Do you want to add something to that?
Yeah, I just
Please.
want to be a little bit provocative and think
Sure.
we should give the voice to the directors to tell something about that Provocation? I don't know.
Yeah, Damien was about to say when we drifted off into Viennese territory, which we might come back later if we want to, but Damien was about to say that the kind of movie you did and wrote was not a movie, or it could be understood as a provocation for CNC, which is the main fund for in France, which has a lot of money and has a lot of ways to help filmmakers do their work.
Yes, it is. I mean, CNC didn't give me money to make that film, and they didn't give me money after I made that film. I tried. Not before, because the film was just to talk about the film, how it was written in 2 weeks or 3 weeks, and then we shoot the film. So the idea came, and then we did it, and we shot in 10 days. So this is just how it was produced, and I produced it. But then film was to Locarno and many places, so it has an audience, and some people get interested in it. But CNC people told that story is too thin, and we don't know the past of the character, and we need more. Yeah, it's funny, and and we need more clear subject and more deep subject. But it's just it's a bit funny, but it's just, we don't need to know the past of the character, because he's a burlesque character. He's a bit like a comical gesture character. So we don't need. He's always dressed the same way. He's a character. At the same time, I think the subject is very clear. It's a young poet. It's written in the title. So I'm a bit, angry. So anyway, yeah, that kind of movie doesn't fit to Sensei. But the fact that I produce it that way also doesn't fit to the system, of course. But I never thought about provocation, and I never thought about it when I create a film, and I never think about that. I just never think about that. I just try to react to what's happening with that guy in this city, with my team, and try to make a film. But we never thought about provocation. I think the film is open, and some people can find it provocative, and some people can find it absolutely non-provocative. So it's really open.
Dana was going to introduce us to some provocative theories you prepared, I think.
Was I? No, I mean, I'm just sitting here in the middle and thinking, is this my path? No, not really. I watched the films before I came here, and then I watched bits and pieces of them again tonight. And now listening to everything that's being discussed, and also the question to you, aren't you just simply getting old? I think it's a very kind of natural and healthy tendency of young filmmakers to do something that is at least a bit different from the powers that be. So the fact that you portray the feeling of a generation, which is in these two films, and I think they fit perfectly together. One is about going somewhere and not going somewhere, and the other is about being somewhere and not being somewhere. I think that's a feeling we all remember or still feel every now and then, depending on how your age thing is going on. But that can be provocative at a certain point in life when you're in movement, and then you feel at that point, I think you feel kind of a distance between that detachment or ennui of an adolescent. So in a way that these two filmmakers made these films for their own reasons, but at the same time are maybe provoking a certain kind of filmmaking that is more mainstream, is not intentional, but it's natural. So I was provoked by that, and I was also provoked by the idea that where do I stand? Am I getting old? Am I getting annoyed by people who just roam the streets? And I thought, no, I'm not really, because you can see that in the end they will either stay or go, but something will happen in their lives. And then when Hans was referring to Knight of Cups, that is a whole. Actually, that should have been the third film in this. No, it would have made a perfect triple bill, because there you see someone who suffers from the same kind of detachment and we, but for many reasons, that film is really offensive to all the women swirling around him. And I responded to Terrence Malick's film with much more irrational and political objections, because I felt, if you so necessarily need to walk on the beach all the time, could you at least do something useful and clear the garbage, or do some volunteer work somewhere? Because it felt much more pointless, and there's much more to be said, but I don't think we should discuss that film into detail here. Whereas in these two films, you could also see that stylistically, the two filmmakers were trying to communicate something that was not just provocative per se, but also trying to communicate something that is existential. So then I was thinking about Kafka and about Rilke, and especially Rilke in his in the letter to the young poet that he is writing. He's also talking about aesthetics as a strategy to get a better understanding of the world. That's basically, if you sum it up very briefly, what he's writing about. And when you surrender to that as an audience, you indeed get a better understanding of the world watching these two films. It's just too nuanced. I'm sorry, but that was what I was thinking.
You're also very welcome to join the discussion if you feel like it. There's a microphone to let yourself be heard. And wenn jemand auf Deutsch sich beteiligen möchte, ist das natürlich selbstverständlich auch möglich. Feel free to give us a sign, or in any other language we might understand here, in Dutch or French or whatever. There's one.
Hi, is it working? Hi. Thank you for the films. It was very interesting. You were talking earlier. My question is for the French director. I don't know your name, Damien. You talked earlier about having good, interesting reactions from the young audiences you had. Did you feel like you provoked anyone by, I don't know, like when you witnessed people looking at your movie? Did you feel like provoking anyone?
I really don't know what, audience is not just one person, it's many people and many different reactions. I get reaction from people who like the film. Usually I don't get reaction for people who don't like the film. So when I say that, it's just that I was touched by the fact that I talked with young people and I understood that the film pointed something that they experience, and they ask themselves like something universal, as you said. But I leave it open, I really do. I leave it open, and there's many different reactions as there is many people, so I don't know how to answer this question.
This audience was laughing a lot. Do you experience that often, that people kind of laugh because they also feel maybe embarrassed themselves while watching?
So the film was built like that way, it's built to, the character is trying and trying and trying and trying. He's a very courageous character, but he's very clumsy, and he's trying, and at the end you just go down with him, and you realize he's scared, and he's trying like a crazy because he's really scared. So if there is laughing reaction, even a bit cruel, because it's a bit a cruel film sometimes, I really like it. I think it's I build the film that way to experience that, and the ending of the film should bring something different.
I want to ask a question to all three filmmakers here, because that's always what I'm wondering about. Sometimes I have the impression that filmmakers are doing a film just for themselves. But of course that's rubbish, and at the same moment they know they will have audience, they should have audience, they want usually. So do you have any kind of specific audience in mind when you're doing your films? And if then an audience, for example at a festival, does not react in the way you expected it, do you like this? Do you think this is great, there's something new I did not expect? Or are you irritated, or do you hate it that you could not control the audience?
That's a tough question. It's a very tough question. And there is many answers, I guess. I totally make the film for myself because I totally like to do this, and even if there is a few people who would watch my film, I would still make it because I like to build it, you know, I like the creation of it. And I think about someone which I don't know, maybe someone I feel close to, but I don't think about the audience or the reaction that way. And after that, sometimes I'm very confused by the reaction, but I don't have a clear answer also. So I'm not like they're so stupid they don't understand, or they're bring something new, and it's a bit like wow, that's the way they reacted. But I need to think about a lot to know what I can get from this. But I don't know how you feel.
You did.
Quite the same. I don't think about it at all before when I'm making a movie, and I mean I like to experience how the audience react, and it always brings something new. And I kind of, when I sit to someone close, I have the feeling I watch the movie through the eye of this person, and I don't think about it. But I have to admit that I was very excited before the movie started, and that comes because, to tell the truth, I want that the people like my movie. Well, actually, I don't think about, but I don't care. Yeah.
Samir, that's a little bit unfair, you know. I would love to be again as naive as these young filmmakers, you know. I'm very old, and I have done more than 40 films and produced more than 100 with colleagues. So it's difficult, you know. Of course you do your films for an audience. It's impossible for me not to think about the audience. And I know after so many years that there are so many audience, you know. I mean, for which audience are you doing? There is not an existing audience, you know. That is nothing, you know. If you are looking here, this audience is built up, you know, by people like you, like him, their friends, Hans, you know. This is a construction of a public, you know. And their films fit to that public, you know. So in that sense, of course, you will find always your public, always. And as he says, there is always one, at least, who watch your film. That's something. And so that's why it's a difficult question to answer, you know. For me, you know, after so many films, it's impossible not to think about the audience. And I just learned all my skills because of the audience, because I was sitting so many times in so many projections, and I sat there and said how stupid I was not to think about that, you know, why I missed that point. I mean, it's obvious they have question marks like that, you know, on the, so why I have done that. That's all.
Do you use that productively also, that you place question marks?
Literally, yes. I do have question marks in my films. I'm writing stuff in it. On my if you want to see my film, you will see the question marks. Yes.
Yeah, it is Iraqi Odyssey, which is in twice more, and you should see it because the Critics Week is over when it's again on Friday and Saturday. And you produced as well the film Dora by Stina Werenfels, which is as well in Panorama. Some of you might have seen it, which is a provocation. But I want to ask you two things. First is, as you did a very personal film about your family in Iraq, does it change something? Is it maybe more intimate, more touching, so that here you want to do something which you want a specific reaction? And you told me the story, for instance, that this was bought. It's a 2-hour something film was bought by American TV, where they will show the whole version in Switzerland, whole version in cinema. Now expect what will be in Germany. 90 minutes, cut down to 90 minutes in WDR and in German cinemas. Do you feel provoked or whatever by this?
Yeah, maybe years ago I would feel provoked. You know, now I know this business. Yeah, it's not cynicism. No, absolutely not. It's much more like
Pragmatism?
I believe the spectators. You know, I
So
believe.
the TV chief is the right spectator to
No.
decide on the
If
length.
somebody sees the film at 12 o'clock and he feels that he want to know more about this film, this is no problem. Then he will go. And it's funny. It was funnily enough to have at this long version I have presented here. A lot of people told me, "Wow, I will see the." You know, Germans, they don't speak well English, so they asked me, "Can I see again the film in German?" I said, "Yeah, of course. Yeah, we will show it in the cinema." So probably they will maybe not note that there is a difference between the 90 minutes or 160. But if they are curious, they will find their way. If they will find their way, I'm very, very. Was heißt vertrauensvoll? Habe ich schon vergessen. Trustable. Yeah, in this audience. Yeah, really. And especially in these days, you know, you have possibilities on VOD, Vimeo, on YouTube, on the websites. We have created also a website, so a platform for that.
Does it make a difference that it's a personal film for you?
Of course, I mean, if you talk about your own family and your own, but again, you know, it's difficult to answer because I'm too old. You know, I know how to use things. You know, I even missed a lot of points. You know, again, shit, it's really, you know, you always miss things. And I wanted to have the punchline there, and nobody laughed. You know, okay, I missed it. But on the other hand, it worked, and people liked the film. So I'm happy because this was my really first, really deep personal film, and I knew that I have to present it in a way that people would understand it. Especially, you know, nobody knows about anything about the Middle East, honestly. We only see superficial bullshit at the TV, and the newspapers are full with so-called experts which don't know anything. So in that sense, it was, of course, a very strong idea to tell a personal story, but which would be understandable even if you don't know the backstories of the Middle East and the history of Iraq. I'm sorry to take away the whole time from these young filmmakers, which are so, you know, enthusiastic, you know, to present their films here. I remember. So yes, it was a difficult problem, and I hope I solved it.
I'd like to ask Hans, because he's programming films. When you're selecting movies, and you're obviously probably also thinking of an audience, are you programming in a way where you are expecting particular reactions in a particular order, maybe, and trying to intersperse something to get something out of the audience, a provocation?
I have a very provocative idea. we're not going to use the word provocation for the rest of the evening.
Good idea.
Because it doesn't help me, you know, it doesn't help me to think, it blocks me. It doesn't help me to think, because now I think, do I want to make a provo? It's so, you know, the two films of the, now we call them the young people, you know. I'm the old one, they are the young one, and you in the middle.
It's biological.
No, but these two young people made films that I liked very much. I thought that they were clever, I thought that they were sweet, but in a nice sense. I thought both were in a certain way absurd. Both had very, especially your film, had something that had some. I was watching a lot the sun and the sea and the air and the south and it was something. It has very many different levels. The film. I didn't think that these two films are provocative at all. It's ridiculous. And if CNC feels provoked by these films, then I don't know. So, and if I see a film, it's if the film touches me in a certain way, but I don't mean it's sentimental touching me, but if it relates in some ways to some experience or some political and aesthetic and personal and relation that I have to the world, which because I think that films are part of the world. And then I'm interested to be the go-between. This is what I think between these films and the people. In this sense, the people in Vienna, they don't usually have the chance to see these films, or not in the way like in a cinema, and we invite the filmmakers. So this is, but I'm not looking for getting something from my public, because it's not my public. It's people like all of us. And all I can wish or I can dream of is that they make a certain experience with the movie, and everybody will make his own experience, because everybody has a different experience. We are all different, and that's all. If I would start to think about provocation, you end up nowhere. I mean, there are so old filmmakers that are so provoked. One of my favorite filmmakers, everybody knows, so at least once I'm gonna mention his name tonight, is Jean-Marie Straub. He's 85 years old, and he's the youngest and most provocative filmmaker that I know, you know. And then there are young filmmakers that look.
I doubt that.
Yeah, okay.
I doubt that.
Yeah,
I doubt that.
And then there are young filmmakers that really look very old to me with their work, you know. So it's not about young and it's not about old, it's not about provocation. It has something to do with the political and an aesthetic and I think that the main thing also is the form, the resistance. This is the real provocation. The real provocation is if something exists on the screen, you know. Like Terrence Malick doesn't exist, this is a piece of shit, it just goes like, you know, it doesn't even hold up to the screen, it's just perfumed shit.
I think
you used the word provocation.
Yeah, you used the P word.
Ah, scheiße.
Yeah. I think
now everybody who uses this has to put money on the table.
for the filmmakers.
Please do.
No. How much?
€5 for the Christmas week.
Okay.
I try.
Okay. So then okay, this is I stop, otherwise I have to pay.
No, I try not to use this word, but is it interesting for you? I think the thing that you have kind of Tourette syndrome, to mention the Malick, means that the Malick film at least is challenging you and irritating you. So my question would be, is it for you as a curator or a boss of a festival interesting to challenge the audience, to irritate the audience, and maybe sometimes through challenge and education and irritation to educate them?
I'm not at all interested in educating anybody, you know, because this is not I'm not here to I'm not an educator, you know, and I'm not here to irritate anybody. I'm just here I don't know what I'm here for. I'm seeing films, and
that's a start.
Huh?
It's a start, yeah. Just seeing films.
I'm seeing films, and I'm over 60 years old. I have a certain experience. I've seen a lot of films. I've worked with some filmmakers, and so I'm the one who is I can only speak for myself, from my own experience. And then I have this official function. I'm the director, blah blah blah, of a film festival. And so I try to find films, which is not very easy, to be honest, that you want to show. There are not so many films. There are filmmakers here, I saw them, I'm not going to mention them, which films I showed in Vienna because I liked them a lot, because I thought they were special, but not because they were provocative.
We're gonna get rich.
€5.
Woohoo! Yeah,
So
we can make a movie.
So to make it short, so it's I think what I do, I try to do in some ways to do things that are not so far away from what the filmmaker does or what the critic does. I think all these things are not so very different, because a filmmaker has to make a certain decision. He has to decide what he's gonna do, where he's gonna put his frame, what happens in his film, what's the text, what he's using, what it's about. A critic also has to find some attitude, some relation to the things that he sees and he criticizes. And I think for me it's the same. I see things and I make my own experience with these, and then I show them I try to show them to the people, and I have the apparatus. I'm lucky, and I have the money, and we are successful, and so we show the films. It's very easy.
I wanted to touch on something else, because we talked briefly about the acting in Eugène Poète, and I was very curious about Judith's take on her own acting, because I found that there was something very deadpan about it. There was something trockner Humor, something where your acting was very was resisting maybe a kind of more expressive play. Could you tell us a little bit about how you approached your acting? Was it your first role?
Yes, unfortunately, yes. But I was lucky with this one.
Lucky with the director, huh?
Right.
Yeah.
And also I had to, together with my DOP, we had to produce this movie. That means that I don't know, I hadn't slept for days, and that's why I'm kind of in this mood. And it was not really acting. I was totally fucked. So hadn't slept for days. That's all. And it was raining the whole time. Yeah. And it was not really, and I was not really interacting, just a few times, and then these scenes were just meetings with friends, so that was very easy for me. It was no acting at all. I mean, we tried, Max, can you remember, we tried this one scene where I tried to cry, but this was so awful, so we cut it. So yeah.
Are there any audience questions or remarks? You're very welcome to join the discussion. I guess there isn't. You were about to say something, Rüdiger?
Was I? I'm not.
You're always about to say something, so yeah.
Of course, I can come up with something. I know there was something I wanted to ask Hans, but we'll come back to this later. No, I have a question again to all the filmmakers, because I'm interested, as I know your films. When you see them, is there a moment, or at least was there maybe when you saw them the first or second time, a moment when you got touched like an spectator, like someone in the audience? Did you cry in your own films at a moment? Kafka, by the way, said this famous sentence of crying cinema, but it's not about that? Was there a moment?
I didn't, and I think I can't. Because I made the film, so I know the film, I saw it 1,000 times. And I accept that I'm not spectator of my film, I'm the one who...
But your character is crying, and you might feel with your character.
I can't feel as an audience, because I made it, so I know that I put a bird sound there, and I put a little sound of the bench, and I know that I made the crying doing like a little noise with my sound editor, so no, I can't see it like this. And I don't feel sad about it, it's just it's that way, you know. But I made it, so I'm not the audience.
I couldn't cry. I just can't. But yeah, like when I see this movie, Hochzeitsvorbereitung auf dem Lande, then I'm quite irritated by myself. So I see me, kind of. I see like maybe I see my vulnerable self, but I also see like my Berliner self, the cool one, and I also see Kafka, and I have this strange, I don't know, separation to myself and to this character, and I don't know who she is, and I'm feel very irritated.
I would like to say something.
Oh, there's someone here.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because we were just talking about the acting, and because I think the actor in the Jeune Poète is he had his own name, so I wondered if he just is like that or how much he acted, because I thought if he acts, he's a really, really special actor. And I disagree with Frederick, because he said he hated this character. I think I just loved him. He's so vulnerable, and I just want to hug him all the time, and to because he's so I don't know, he's just great. And I wonder how you managed to make this character not being like that you don't hate him and that you don't think he's lächerlich, he's ridiculous, and because you could easily tell a story where you always laugh at him and you don't like him at all, but you like him, and I think this is really great, and I adore that. So
I think in the film he's quite, as I said before, he's quite close to what he's in his life, and he's quite free. I mean, the way I shoot the film is maybe more than 50% improvisation, and or maybe 60% improvisation, 40% written script, and I do very long shots, and I talk with him during the shots. So he's very natural because of that, because we try to do this. And for the rest, I don't really know. I think he's that way, and the film corresponds to the question he's asking himself. At the end of the film, when you see the last scene, it's the last scene we shot about his future or something like this, his existential question. He was not talking about poetry, of course. He was talking about this 1 week of shooting we just did. He was tired, and he was asking himself, should I continue trying to be an actor or not? So there is a very thin line between fiction and documentary or reality. That's what we try to do. He's an actor. He's an actor because he acted in 2 of my films, but then he didn't act in other films. I shot him I worked with him when he was 14, and I shot him again when he was 18. In fact, the film I was, though it was a short story. I was in very, very sad mood because I was writing a script, and it was very long time, 2 years of writing to finance and very difficult. And then he sent me a texto and saying, I just got my baccalaureate. I'm so happy. Serious things are starting in my life. So I read the texto. I was like, wow, such a difference between my current state of mind and he was burning, you know. So I called him and I said, do you want to make a film this summer? And he said yes. So we did it. So this is how the film started. I like this story.
So we saw a documentary.
It's a documentary, clearly, but it's made to be seen as a fiction. I mean, it can't exist without a fiction. I mean, it needs fiction.
There's one point I wanted to touch upon because when we wrote this program and used the word, we we thought about used a word. We thought about this distance. I mean, obviously we're here in a specific context, but films travel through contexts and from one to another, and we always wonder about in which context films can work. And we talked about irritation, and I think in some way nothing can irritate us really, but at the same time we get irritated so quickly. So yeah, I wanted to ask you about whether you think, and maybe Dana can talk about it a little bit, because you write also for very different kinds of outlets, and I think whether you project yourself into an audience that might get irritated by what you write about, and maybe Rüdiger feels like answering that also.
I don't project myself in an audience, even though I write for a specialized film magazine and a daily evening newspaper. I feel that I can very much write what I want, except that for the newspaper I have to explain a bit more because they are general readers, but it's kind of a decent liberal paper, so they're educated. Am I easily irritated? I don't know. As a critic, for me it's really important, first of all, to try to understand what the film is doing, and I think one of the capacities for being maybe somewhat of a good critic is that you are hypersensitive. So that doesn't necessarily mean that you're whatever, irritated, annoyed, but also touched easily. But at the same time, because you have a certain experience, you're able to reflect on that while watching and afterwards. I'm not really sure what I'm saying with this. Does it look like some answer to some question? No, I'm really trying to piece things together, and also think of my job as a critic, because it's really important for me to introduce audiences to different kinds of thinking, not only about cinema, but also about the world and the times we're living in, and there we get back to Rilke, about how actually the experience of an artwork helps us to understand that world in a more profound and meaningful way. And doing that is really important in this world. So in a way, that's also a political kind of action. You think of the question.
I think you answered the question, and I have only one short thing to add, because you said a critic should be hypersensitive. And I think there is this thing you can find outside. I think you have it here, the paper for activist film critic. And it was always something which I liked in a way, but in the same moment I felt irritated by this word activism. because I think the virtue of a critic is first of all to be passive. When you sit in a cinema, passive. A critic, and maybe the audience as well, the best thing is to be passive in the way that you don't expect certain things. You just sit there and let the film tell you how the film wants to be perceived. There is no sense in it to go into the cinema with an agenda and then ask the film how or whether it fulfills any agenda. It can be aesthetic, politic, whatever. And of course, then maybe the way we are working when we come out of the cinema should be activist, because there we should try to challenge ourselves and the audience, which means the readers, not the audience in the cinema, because we are writing, or when we do radio, telling something about the film and the context, a festival, for example, or a parallel festival like this one. We are, of course, we are telling it as well to readers and to an audience which has not seen the films, maybe another film, which is maybe not even in Berlin. So in a way, of course, we have to add a lot of things which are not important for a filmmaker. And our texts are in a way for the filmmakers, I guess. At least I try to write texts which are of some use, at least for you as well. But on the other hand, of course, this is not the question. Was this an answer? Yes, maybe.
But I like the idea of activist film criticism, because if there is one criteria for good cinema, is that it activates you, so that it changes you in a way, that it awakes you, that it heightens your perception, and that even after 2 hours you leave the cinema as a new person and you're changed, and something has happened in your synapses, in your brain, and in your heart, and in your gut, and in all the places where things happen in your body. So a lot of my colleagues are not like that at all. They have actually more of an agenda because they feel like they have to talk about cinema in a certain way, talk about what the audience already knows. They have their tastes so upfront that it's hard for them to actually be activated by something unknown or unfamiliar or just strange. So the idea that you try to watch cinema again and try to talk about cinema again in a way that it's actually something uplifting, that is good about that. And that is also, especially in these days and times where we're all kind of being dumbed down by this 24/7 attention economy, that is once again an activist thing, because we are waking up. So I like that. And also I don't think we're too passive sitting in the cinema, because it's like all these things I just described are going on at the same time. So, but it's, yeah.
I just meant passive in the sense of open, without prejudice, and in a way, let the film be the most active part in this moment when we are sitting there and watching it. Let the film tell us something, and let's be as open as possible for the film.
I would like to say something. I'm absolutely with you. I would say, let the film be the active thing. Let's get back to the film, and I think, and I'm very willing to pay for this. What provokes me most is actually a group of people sitting together trying to make sense, kind of, or interpret a work of art, and even worse, force filmmakers to kind of justify themselves towards an idea, like an intellectual construct. And every time I see a panel like this, and I'm organizing these panels together with my friends here, so every time I see a panel like this, I really feel provoked to run out of the cinema and unlearn what I just heard, but get back to the original inspiration the film gave me. And yeah, this is I'm with you, Dana. This is my idea of kind of activist, an activist idea, yeah.
So you're afraid we put some ideas in your head, or?
No, it sometimes feels like overloading the original sense I have of the film when I watch it, and I try to as often as possible just watch it in a naive way again, and I think inspiration or maybe an urge to act is maybe sometimes contrary to kind of intellectualizing everything.
Isn't that an illusion to have this innocence, this paradise of pure naivety?
Well, you could talk about intuition, for example. Kind of stay true to the reflexes you have, and of course they are always linked to intellectual ideas. But yeah, it's more like I feel often an urge to reduce this, like, and just go with my feeling, and then the ideas can be created. But yeah.
But
Yeah,
why?
but
Why is
that's one kind of definition of criticism, is like trying to find arguments for your intuitions. So I don't think there's a problem with that.
No, there's not a problem. I have a problem with this too easy opposition between intellect and emotion or feeling. Feeling is intellectual. Intellect, if it works proper, has something to do with emotion, and I think this is just the wrong cut between the two.
No, I agree.
But what we're doing here is also trying, no matter how clumsy, we're even more clumsy than the young poet, but actually I start to like it. What we're trying to do here, and maybe we're the weirdest company of people gathered around on a stage to do that, but what we're trying to do is find actually or redefine or new, old, whatever ways to talk about cinema, because there is definitely something that a lot of us are missing, and I'm sure that with us I could easily mean critics, filmmakers, programmers, everybody with a heart for cinema, that there's definitely something right now missing in the way we use cinema in a discourse, and we talk about cinema and the cinematic experience and the cinematic in our lives, because we're all falling back to old reflexes. And that's actually why I'm feeling very silenced by my own thoughts, because I don't want to repeat myself. And it's like I don't want to talk about cinema in a way that we critics have been talking about it since forever, because we need to redefine the talking about cinema, because otherwise we surrender to the commodification and the marketing and everything that's destroying cinema right now. So yeah, it's maybe like you're really watching us, I don't know, learning to walk here, but we're trying.
I think it's not bad how you walk here. I just wondered whether you ever came up with the idea that you could organize this week together with filmmakers and not as critics amongst themselves, because that's weird for me, like, to watch that, and it's kind of tiring sometimes, and it might be much better to do that together with film people or festival organizers. And
well, you have a magazine, Revolver, which is filmmakers writing, and no critics allowed to write as well, as far as I know.
no, that's not true.
Okay, I thought so.
We had a whole edition with
To be
critics
once,
who wrote.
yes, yeah, once, yeah, sure.
Yeah, but in
10
between
years
we-
ago.
Well, but it's allowed.
I'm
Like,
not
everybody
criticizing it. It's just I thought.
No, everybody can write there. Like, we have festival makers, Zuzana is a producer. It's a mix.
Okay.
My point is that I've got the feeling that you're left alone up there, and then you're circling around questions which wouldn't occur if there were filmmakers amongst you. I mean, you make films yourselves, Rüdiger, and it feels a bit strange because.
Yeah, you know, the thing, Franz, is that I think Dana said the right way, right sentence. We are trying to walk. So we are starting, and as well, the whole Critics Week is kind of starting to walk. It's a young, innocent baby. Of course, we all here, and thanks for all your support and your support, we try to find our way, which means as well the way of discussion. For me, an important word as well would be, besides irritation, would be communication. And maybe this bounds it together. as a film is communicating, hopefully, and even when it's a very bad film, or we can have fight about it or so, it's communicating to all of us. And in certain ways, a lot of ways. And what filmmakers, first of all, are doing is, of course, I understand it, that you're communicating to some audience. We spoke about that first, and as well to yourself. It's always self-reflective. And we as critics are doing the same. In a way, I could answer the question I was posing to you of where do you do your films for? I could do it myself about where do I write for? Of course, I'm writing for myself, first of all, because I want to write this, what I'm writing. And it's awful if I'm not allowed to do this, and sometimes this can happen. Therefore, the blog was invented, and we start to write in blogs, and which is a much more liberal and free space, but as well, it's not as easy as it seems on the first look. And then definitely we are trying to communicate to the audience, and the audience is recommunicating. And I think as well, this intellectual or whatever, this verbal discourse is a way of communication. It's an offer, like a film is an offer. No one has to go into the cinema and watch the film. No one has to listen to us because it's maybe too whatever, poetic. And but we can, you can. And this is even being silent, even if someone is walking out, it's a way to communicate.
Also, I think in the history of art and in the history of cinema, there have been periods where meaningful relationships between critics and filmmakers existed. And nowadays, basically in mainstream film journalism, what you see is that there is this huge taboo on filmmakers, programmers, critics, whatever, integrating, because that would be at the cost of the so-called objectivity of the journalist, which is, of course, from a journalistic perspective, very true and noble, etc., etc. But at the same time, from a critic's perspective, it also creates a weird distance between yourself and your whatever's going on while you're talking and writing about cinema, and the thing you're writing about, the film and the filmmaker. And by objectifying that to an extent that it becomes so distant from yourself, it becomes a commodity. And I actually think that's a very dangerous development. So after writing for, I don't know, 20 years, I have to redefine that relationship for myself, and without becoming like whatever closest friend with filmmakers and being their most loyal advocate or whatever, I feel like, are there other ways to re-establish a meaningful discourse between the several kind of sides of all the players in that field? Because in a way we also have a shared interest, which is film culture. And I don't think that critics can totally distance themselves from that discourse.
There's just a quick answer I wanted to give, and then we have a question in the back. I think it's very important for us to allow ourselves to be vulnerable in what we do here, and to accept that what we do is probably wrong in many ways, or can be, or just short of something, or maybe overboard, or whatever. I think that's a key to what we're trying to do, is to question the routines of film showing, film discussing, writing about it, and by doing that, we are permitting ourselves to make mistakes, and that's why I think that's one of the venues we go along, and that's why we allow ourselves to put here something that might be very far from the closest thing you need to take to write or talk about a film, and yeah, that's one of our motivations.
Yeah, I actually want to take a huge step back and comment on Dennis's comment, which is about the innocence when you watch a movie. And for me, it's like, if a movie is really great, I get the innocence back, because I don't see it and I'm like, oh, that was a great match cut or something, because I just don't think about it, because I just take the movie in a passive way. but afterwards I maybe have to re-see it so that I can analyze it and think about it more clearly. But if the movie is really good for me, I can take it in a really naive and innocent way. If it's but it only happens if it's like really good for me. That's what I want to say. Okay.
Thank you. You want to interject something, or?
Forgot it. I think it's. I think what I see is what you get. I mean, we see you asking questions. We are here and we talk. So what's so special about this situation? This is exactly what it's like. Nobody is better or less good than he is. This is a so-called dispositif. What we see here, we are up here. We look at you. You look at us, and everybody mentions his things. I think that I don't agree with many things that my colleagues. I don't have any colleagues, and they don't have any colleagues. I'm not here for film culture. I'm not interested in film culture at all. I'm interested in the revolution. Sounds very old-fashioned. I'm not interested in film culture. I'm interested in changing the world. I mean, I know that I'm not strong enough, that I'm a petit bourgeois, that I can do it, and not by programming films, but at least I still have a little idea in the back of my head that there's something else possible than the things that exist in this world. This is the first thing. The second thing is we are part of a, my English is so bad, a caste? Caste? Or a caste?
A caste as
no,
well,
not
but
only a social.
Indian
It's
caste.
not a social class. It's a caste. It's like actors are a caste, or it's so we follow certain interests. We follow certain economic interests. We follow many things, and then we try to have our little freedom in this to follow our own ideas and our own things. I think that film criticism. I think a good filmmaker is a good film critic for me. An interesting filmmaker can be a very good film critic, in my sense, much better than many film critics that I know. This is the one thing. And there are many people that I know film critics that I talk to. There's a waiter in the coffee house opposite the street where I live that I know very well. And this sounds really pretentious, I know it, but if I talk with him about movies, it's more interesting for me than to talk with the Austrian film critics about movies, because they are all so spoiled and so this is what we are doing here and what you are doing is like people that are in the wood and they are, how do you say, whistling, so they are not too afraid, or they don't lose their way, or they know that there are other people around, so they go like, and this is what we do. It doesn't make a lot of sense, but I think we shouldn't accuse ourselves for this. I wouldn't.
But may I ask a question? Yeah, well, I'm not asking about film culture, but about revolution. Could
No, it sounds very silly. I know it.
no, I love.
Who uses this word should have to pay a lot of money.
After the revolution, yes. Then everyone has money. No.
Nobody has money then. There will be no money.
Yeah.
Because money is no Gegenwert for anything.
First of all, I love the idea and I don't think it's silly. Absolutely not. And in a way, which sounds even more silly than what you said, I think that writing film criticism in a way can as well be a little step to revolution. But what I wanted to ask is, can cinema, and when can, in your opinion, cinema be the beginning of or a part of a revolution? When can it be revolutionary or so?
Definitely no. The answer is no. I don't think so. I think that it can be. It can give you some ideas, some mood. It can be some kind of ferment or something that some experience or something that gives you. It can make you feel something. It can give you some hints, or it can give you some fresh air or something. But And then it's already a lot. And I'm not gonna use again the Tourette filmmaker, because there's a wonderful, how do you say, Perlenkette of those now. You see Herzog, Wenders, Greenaway. It's all the same. It's shit, and it's not even worth talking and writing about it. It's not worth watching it.
May I ask a question?
Because you know what, I'm an anhänger, a follower of the old 68 theory. If you see a bad film, it does something to you. It's a materialistic idea. We are not a medium. Things don't go through us. If you eat something and it's not good, it will do something to you. And if you see a film, it will hurt you. It will do something with you. It will I don't know.
Is Berlinale poisoning you?
No, the Berlinale is not strong enough to poison me, but on the long run, I don't know.
There was a question.
Yeah, I just wanted to come back to one point that you made a couple of comments before from the audience, which is the format itself. Saying should film critics sit together with filmmakers on a panel and with a film festival director and speak about a movie and general ideas about filmmaking and film criticism after we have seen the movies of the filmmakers. Now I come from the theater, and the feeling is there that theater critics rather are much more stronger cast in the sense of being a little bit like penguins in after the premiere, sticking to themselves. And I have the feeling that what you try, and so I have a different opinion, what you try to, as critics, to really sit together with the filmmakers and be in that open space of, criticizing on a blog and writing about it is one thing, but to sit after the movie and be in an open-minded discussion in whichever way it's leading you, yes, I think this is a very nice experiment, yes, to try this out. And of course, it can go either way, and how much space can you give each other. But I enjoy that a combination a lot, because you have the chance to ask the filmmakers things which might, then change also your opinion even afterwards about the movie itself, which I think is a possibility in that way, So I have a different opinion. I don't think it must be like Schublade, only filmmakers speak together, only critics speak together, because then, we lose that feeling of, let's say, finding a common language for things, yes? And I think that's lacking for me in Berlinale as well, that this kind of discussion is not really happening. It's rather happening in the Empfangs and, and in rather representative events. So in this way, I think I enjoy that possibility to hear really different caster voices at the same moment.
We'll have 2 more nights to experiment with you, hopefully, and with other guests. Tomorrow we'll try to explore the question of status. We'll show the 102nd film by Im Kwon-taek, Korean filmmaker, and we'll discuss with Erika and Ulrich Gregor, founders of the Forum, and Heide Schlüppmann, and Jin Park, a Korean programmer. And on Thursday we'll finish the week with Die Lügen der Sieger, The Lies of the Victor, and Man müsste Räuber sein oder zumindest Sprengmeister by Jan Bachmann. And hope to see you there. Thank you very much. Thank you.